Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. Happy Sunday to you, my friends. Happy Sunday. Welcome. I hope that you had a wonderful, a beautiful holiday. I hope you enjoyed your family, your friends. You ate a lot of turkey. You had some fun, maybe played cards, played some board games, and just enjoyed your family, right? So I am back and I've been thinking about going over more of the evidence, right? Since we don't know when the Idaho floor trial will be for Mr. Kohberger, we have some indefinite time on our hands. And now we can go back and we can break down more of the evidence. Things that honestly we just did not have time to discuss. Maybe we overlooked some things or shared some things like on my Hidden Horror Facebook page, but just didn't have time to discuss it. So, because we have time before the trial, I'm going to start going over some of the evidence. And I don't want to say dismantling it, but I have to be honest. This case has been shaky for a long time with a lot of weak evidence, a lot of circumstantial evidence. And one thing that I really didn't touch, and I said, hey, we're going to refer to the experts. Let the FBI, let them get on the stand and support the information that has come out that there are 12 alleged pings with the suspect, Mr. Kohberger, in the area of 1122 King Road. I didn't buy it, I didn't believe it, but I also didn't have time to kind of break down the why. But I'm here today. You guys got me. We can spend some time together discussing the why. Why do I feel that this evidence it shouldn't even be allowed? It shouldn't even be admitted into court at the trial. Through this discovery process, all of this information that the prosecutor has from the FBI analysis of that cell phone data, the towers, and pinging, all of that should have been provided to Brian Kohberger's defense, right? And they're going to have experts that can go through all of the evidence. How did they get to that point? Did they use GPS? Did the GPS show that? Or they use triangulation? I believe they use triangulation, and I'm going to explain to you why. I'm demonstrating there's actually three towers. You can't see the third one, but I'm going to talk about a little bit about GPS, and then I'm going to talk more about triangulation. And the reason I'm going to spend more time on triangulation is because I feel that's what the FBI used. You can't always use GPS, right? Maybe they didn't have it. Maybe they couldn't get that data. Maybe they didn't have access to the phone at the time. Maybe the car doesn't even have GPS, right? It's an older model car. So I believe the FBI allegedly relied on triangulation. So I want to talk about both. And I want to highlight something, and that's why I'm coming up front with a punch in the gut. This evidence should not be submitted at the trial because I'm going to read this statement. We're going to start out strong on page 15 of the statement of Brett Kane in his affidavit. Okay, it's Exhibit A. It reads as follows. I'm going to loop this all in at the end and come back to it. Investigators found that the 8458 phone did connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14th, 2022. But investigators do not believe the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that date. They don't believe it. That means that the information, the data that they are relying on is not accurate. It's not reliable. How can, and they're referring to Mr. Kohberger's cell phone ending in 8458. How can his cell phone be pinging off a tower in Moscow when they already know from investigation that he was not in Moscow? This goes to show you that the data that they have is not reliable. And I know why, right? I know that in a small town, this is not a large city. This is not a city that would have a lot of towers. This is not a New York. This is not um, maybe Detroit, Chicago. This is a small town, a small city. They're not going to have the same level of towers where you have a lot of towers, a dense amount of towers. You're going to have a very small few amount of towers. And you can have things like weather affect those towers, the mountains. You could have areas where there's poor service, there's just you're disconnected altogether, or there's no coverage, right? No coverage at all, or you get into a place where you're just out of coverage, out of range of these towers, and your phone will not work. They're not going to tell you that, though, right? They're not going to tell you all of the issues that are going to come into play in this area where they're trying to use triangulation. This is inaccurate data, right? So how can we rely on all of the other data? We don't know, right? And there's rules, right? In the state of Idaho, they have rules of evidence, and we're going to refer specifically to Rule 702 and 703 regarding expert testimony. That testimony must be valuable. It must be able to be presented to the jury in a way that is going to be meaningful and reasonably reliable. Now, why would you allow evidence that you know is not reliable? They're saying it in their own affidavit for Brett Payne, right? He's saying that although we know that there's pings going on in Moscow for this 8458 phone, we know he was not in Moscow. We know he wasn't there. The phone is placing him there, but through our investigation, we have already confirmed that he wasn't there. So how do we rely on all of the other pings? You're allegedly saying that there were 12 instances that placed him near 1122 King Road, but how can we rely on that? Especially if it's using, again, triangulation, which is not reliable. Not GPS satellite, no. GPS satellite is more precise. It's very specific, okay? And it's more reliable. And I don't think they have that. I don't know if they were able to get the GPS from the car. And I don't think they were able to get any GPS tracking on his phone. So let's discuss all of that. But let's go back. Let's lay this foundation, okay? Let's talk about it. So the first thing that I want to really lay this foundation for is, what is GPS, right? What is triangulation? Some people don't know, and they may not know a lot of details. I didn't, so I had to do my research. I had to look into it more. So, according to Wikipedia, GPS stands for the Global Positioning System. Originally, it was Navstar GPS. It is a satellite-based radio navigation system owned by the United States government and operated by the United States Space Force. It is one of the global navigation satellite systems, they call it GNSS, that provides location and time information to a GPS receiver anywhere on or near the Earth where there is an unobstructed line of sight to 4 or more GPS satellites. So they're using 4 or more GPS satellites. They're saying they can get a location anywhere on the Earth if there's an unobstructed line of sight where they're using 4 or more GPS satellites. That's amazing technology. It does not require the user to transmit any data and operates independently of any telephonic or internet reception. Though these technologies can enhance the usefulness of the GPS positioning information, it provides critical positioning capabilities to the military for civil purposes and commercial users around the world. Although the United States government created, controls, and maintains the GPS system, it is freely accessible to anyone with a GPS receiver. Okay, so let's do a little pause and let's go over the GPS. So the GPS is very, very precise. It's using 4 or more GPS satellites, and as long as the intended thing that they're trying to track has an unobstructed line, they're able to get a precise location with anything in the world. Okay, so they're using it primarily for military purposes, right? Which we understand, and that's smart, right? It's owned by the US government, so that's great. Great technology for us to use. Now, this I do not believe is what was used in the Idaho 4 murder case, specifically the means to or the method to come up with the 12 alleged pings of the 8485, known as Brian Kohberger's phone. I don't think they used GPS. I do not. Now, I think what was used was triangulation. Now, you can follow along on the Hidden Horror Facebook page because I have to go over this, and it's a little long. It's longer than the GPS, right? Okay. Cell phone triangulation. Cell phones have an amazing amount of data on them: pictures, call logs, contacts, text messages, etc. One of the things that most modern cell phones have is GPS, Global Positioning System data, right? So this is what you would want to use. This is the prime top of the list. You want to use GPS tracking if possible, right? GPS information allows one or anyone else for that matter to find out where you are in the world. Where you are in the world, okay? But what if you don't have GPS? What do, right? Your phone still knows where you are, albeit only roughly, right? So triangulation is going to come into play where it's going to take multiple towers to try to place where you are. The process is relatively straightforward, but the average citizen on the street rarely has access to this kind of information in order to determine a cell phone's location. First, a lesson on how cell phones interact with towers. Cell towers are everywhere. Now, let me say this: they are everywhere. However, in larger cities and larger populations, there are going to be way, way, way more cell phone towers, okay? This is just a proven thing. So when you have smaller areas, smaller cities, smaller towns, you may not have the level of towers. You may only have a few, a handful of towers, if that. And it also depends on it's other factors, right? Let me give you a couple other factors. And I've already kind of addressed this a little bit, but with the cell phone towers, what is their range? What is each cell phone tower's range? Is it 10 miles, 5 miles, 30 miles, right? What is the range of this cell phone tower? So we have to consider that. Other things that could affect the cell phone tower is, are a lot of people using this cell phone tower? Maybe your ping would be diverted to a different tower because this tower may be covering a college or university would have so much traffic, you may be diverted to a different tower, a tower that's further away because there's so much traffic. We have to think about all these factors. Weather, right? Weather could affect it, especially in an area that does not have a lot of cell phone towers. You may have great distances, and what will happen, you may have no service, you may have kind of weak service, or poor service where you're just getting dropped, right? So these are the type of issues you would find in an area like where the Idaho 4 murder case occurred, the murders happened, because that's going to be a much smaller city, okay? But let's keep going. First, let's know how cell phones interact with towers. Cell towers are everywhere. They are what make up the network that we all use to communicate with each other. So, we connect with these towers is generally by signal strength and how many people are connected to a tower at that point in time. This means, and what makes triangulation not an exact science, is that you can be standing right underneath a cell tower, but really be connected to one 5 miles away. So, does that mean that you're 5 miles away because that's the tower that's picking up? No, you're right next to the tower, right? But because of the level of traffic, so many people are using this tower that your actual usage, say you're sending a text or making a phone call, is diverted to a tower that's 5 miles away. So when it says you're 5 miles away, is that accurate, right? No, of course. And this is the problem. This is a major, major problem in Idaho 4 murder case. It is already said in the PCA, right? On page 15, they knew he was not in Moscow on November 14th, but his phone was pinging off a tower that showed his cell phone now. And we're believing that he's having the cell phone on him, right? Most people do. But his phone was in Moscow, and he was not in Moscow, Idaho. And this is a big problem for the prosecution. Hopefully, the defense will aggressively attack with their own expert witness this idea that he was at the house 12 times, because we already know he probably was sitting at home in Pullman, Washington, when the ping happened and said he was in Moscow, Idaho. They already know he wasn't there. So how can we rely on this whole idea that there were 12 other pings? We don't know, because what we do know is the data is not reliable when you're using this method over GPS. Triangulation is not going to be accurate, specifically because this is a small area with limited resources, a very few towers, and because it's highly likely that all of that traffic near the university, all of those students, all of those different people, employees, you might have some traffic diverted to towers that are a lot further away. And that is just all the honesty. And they have we need to know what method was the FBI using. I believe because GPS is so precise, I don't think they used that. I don't think they had they used that for this analysis. I think that they used triangulation. But let's continue on. Depending upon the cellular carrier system, you may be connected to multiple towers at once. Alternatively, as you move around, you change towers. All the while, multiple towers may see the phone as it moves. The way that triangulation can estimate your location, let's put in quotations, estimate, right? Estimate is by taking the tower that the phone is connected to. Again, this may not be the closest tower, okay? This may not be the closest tower. Understand this, please. They draw a circle around the tower, which would depict the coverage area for the tower. So they're going to take the tower and they're going to draw a circle. This is how much is going to be covered by this one tower. Okay. Process is repeated with the next 1 to 2 towers. So you can see the circles around me, right? Behind me. Until you are left with overlapping circles. So you're going to have a point where the 3 towers, that coverage area overlaps. In theory, the phone being sought is somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the middle of these 3 circles, okay? Now, what range is that? How much space is that? Is that a half a mile? Is that a mile? Is that 3 miles? We need to know those specifics, right? Before you can make these assertions in the PCA, we don't have the details, we don't have the specifics, and we need to know that, right? Okay. In an urban setting, the circles would be small, a few hundred meters. In a rural area, the circles would be bigger, okay? Because those towers would be everywhere. You wouldn't see 3 towers, 4 or 5 towers in a huge city like Chicago. You would see hundreds of towers because so many people are relying on they want to be able to text, make phone calls, do gaming, all of that stuff that requires the usage of these towers, right? As stated before, it's not an exact science. When GPS data is available, that is preferable to use because it's more precise. But in those rare cases when it is not, this approximation can mean the difference between a person being in one place when they say they are in another. We can refer back. Let me read this again, okay? We have to be very, very astute. Very, very astute in all of the evidence in this Idaho Florida murder case. We're going to start going over it. Investigators found that the 8458 phone did connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow, Idaho on November 14, 2022. But investigators not believe the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that date. They even went the next step further. They said the 8458 phone has not connected to any towers that provide service to Moscow since that date. Well, we already know he wasn't in Moscow on that date. You're already acknowledging that this data is not reliable. It's kind of wild. And again, I'm not here to tear apart the case. I'm sure that the defense is highly aware of all this evidence. This would have been provided, this FBI analysis would have been provided to the defense in the discovery process. So they should already know and be aware of this. And again, it's just more information, more evidence where they were really trying to connect Mr. Kohberger to the white Elantra, to the alleged suspect vehicle. Not just that there was a white Elantra that they deemed this is the suspect vehicle, but saying that through this tracking, whether they use GPS or triangulation, through this tracking, we can now place you in the area, not just a white Elantra that they're not aware if it was his or not, right? But we can place you in this area through GPS tracking or triangulation. But we already see that this too is not reliable. Let's keep going. We want to now go over some more information I want to talk a little bit about Idaho rules of evidence. Let me just go over a few of my notes. I really wrote out a lot of notes for this. It does not appear that I'm going to need them because I did try to prep well. I want to now turn my attention more so to the actual court case, right? So there's rules of evidence in each state. The state of Idaho, they have two rules that I find to be very valid in this conversation. The first rule is Rule 702, and this is referring to testimony by an expert witness. Now, more than likely, whoever was the FBI analyst that provided some reports on the data that he or she obtained, we would probably be considered the expert witness that's going to testify to whatever their findings were. Idaho Rule 702, Rule of Evidence 702, it reads out: a witness who is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education may testify in the form of an opinion or otherwise if the expert's scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will help the trier of fact to understand the evidence or to determine a fact and issue. So what this is saying is the jury, they may not understand something. So you may have an expert witness come in with all of their experience, their education, their skill, their training, all of this put together. They will come in front of the jury to detail the reasoning, their opinion, whatever their reasoning is, whatever their findings is, to help the jury understand something. So in the case of this either GPS, they use the triangulation, because we don't know which one they used, right? So if they use the GPS or the triangulation to come to their opinion or reasoning or whatever finding they came to say that there were 12 pings, for example, and I'm going to say allegedly, by the 8458 phone. That's just one thing they said. And now, of course, the path during the night or early morning hours of the Idaho 4 murders. That's the second big finding. Those two findings, the 12 alleged pings that says that Brian Kohberger 8458 phone was in the area of 1122 King Road, or to say the path that the pings was on, the 8458 ping was on during the night, so November 12th into November 13th, whatever they reviewed, because we don't know exactly, but whatever they reviewed, they're coming to some type of conclusion and being able to place some kind of path to say that Brian Kohberger was on. Now, they're saying that this expert witness can come forward if it's going to help the jury understand and determine that this is a fact. But how can they do that in this case when they've already conceded that? I'm sorry, 1 second. I can't even move fast enough to stop my phone from moving. I apologize. Okay, let me get back to my point. How can an expert come forward from the FBI when they've already conceded that they know that Mr. Kohberger's phone pinged in Moscow when they know he wasn't there? How can all of the other data be reliable? More than likely, I would feel that it's not reliable, that this should not go forward. It should not be submitted as evidence or admitted as evidence because it's not reliable. They've already conceded that on page 15 of the PCA, right? So that's Rule 702 for Idaho Rules of Evidence. Why bring forth the FBI analysts if they've already conceded that the data is not reliable? The second rule that I want to go over is Idaho Rules of Evidence, Rule 703. Now, let me read this one. It bases an expert's opinion testimony. An expert may base an opinion on facts or data in the case that the expert has been made aware of or personally observed. If experts in the particular field would reasonably rely on those kind of facts or data in forming an opinion or inference on the subject, they need not be admissible for the opinion to be admitted. But if the facts or data would otherwise be, the proponent of the opinion may disclose them to the jury only if their probative value in helping the jury evaluate the opinion substantially outweighs their prejudicial effect. Now, to me, I'm kind of putting rules 702 and 703 together a little bit because what value is it to have the FBI analysts go over all of this data to then say, according to page 15 of the PCA, that is not reliable? Now, I did take notes on this. Because I want to say it the right way. If Mr. Kohberger, according to the PCA, they know he was not in Moscow, Idaho. They know that through their investigation. So they're not relying on the data. If they know this, how can they expect the jury to rely on all of these other times, these 12 elections and November 12th and November 13th, if their own analysis revealed that the data is not reliable? Do you not believe that the jury may be confused? Remember in Rule 703, it says, but if the facts or data will otherwise be inadmissible, the proponent of the opinion may disclose them to the jury only if their probative value in helping the jury evaluate the opinion substantially outweighs their prejudicial effect. I think that Rule 702 and 703 kind of go hand in hand in the Idaho 4 murder case because I think that this may, I don't want to use the word confuse, but it's not, the data is not consistent, it's not reliable, it's not precise, it's not specific. And per page 15 of the PCA is actually showing us that it's not reliable, it's not accurate, it's actually the wrong, it's misleading. And I think that if this evidence was allowed to be admitted, it could mislead the jury. If you have an expert testifying that we can rely on this, and this is the data, that there were 12 pings allegedly, and that allegedly not just the suspect vehicle car, this white Elantra, which they changed the year, we're going to go with that. But my point is, they're trying to place Mr. Kohberger there through this data. However, the data has proven to be not reliable. Per their own PCA statement, it's not reliable. It's not consistent. It's not something that the jury should even hear as testimony because it's not reliable. I guess they would have to just cross-examine and tear it apart, which I think, again, is another reason why at this time I do not feel Brian Kohberger should continually be prosecuted. I think they should have allowed the charges to be withdrawn at this time because they can't place him there. They're saying that alleged Elantra, the Kohberger owns an Elantra. That's not the issue. The issue is, even if the Elantra is there, they still haven't been able to place Mr. Kohberger behind the wheel or in the car in any meaningful way. Moreover, they're trying to use the cell phone data, but now it's coming out, it's being shown through their own PCA that it's not reliable. Because just the next day, November 14th, they know he wasn't in Moscow, but his cell phone data showed it's pinging and placing him in Moscow. It's not reliable. This is why I do not believe this evidence should be admitted. It's just not reliable. And I don't think it'll be helpful to the jury. I think it will mislead the jury. I don't think you should put an expert on the stand. I don't think that they could even reasonably say that the other pings are reliable when they already know the very next day, November 14th, that data was not accurate. So I want to go over one more thing to wrap it all up. I like to provide some details from different sources. So I'm going to read, I love to read articles for you. So I just don't base it off of my feelings, for example. I give you various sources to kind of hear from. Okay, so there is a law firm called the John T. Floyd Law Firm. Their website, is johntfloyd.com. And he wrote a great message on the website on January 23rd of 2023. It's called Cell Phone Location Data Important in Prosecuting Idaho College Murders. So I want to read this article to you. Okay. Cellular location site information, and that's CLSI, allows law enforcement through the Global Positioning System, GPS, and phone company records to track the location of a cell phone anywhere in society or even in one's own home. CLSI played a major role in investigating the University of Idaho murder case that began in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, with the brutal unaliving of 4 university students in an off-campus apartment in the small community of Moscow, Idaho. The case drew intense national and international media attention as state and federal law enforcement agencies investigated the crime. In late November, a Washington State University criminal justice student, Brian Kohberger, became a suspect in the crime through video surveillance of a vehicle similar to one owned by the suspect and through an eyewitness statement and DNA evidence. On December 23rd, 2022, law enforcement authorities sought and secured a search warrant for AT&T records of a cell phone they believe belonged to Kohberger. Cell phone data collected from that search placed Kohberger's phone at or near the crime scene on the date that the crime occurred and nearly a dozen other times near the crime scene during the 3 months preceding the crime. This CLSI evidence will undoubtedly be a contested issue at Kohberger's trial. So he knew it right then in January of 2023. He's telling you, he's warning you, he's highlighting it, saying this is going to be a big issue for the prosecution. Let's experience. CLSI is gathered through a technique called triangulation, a process of using GPS data from multiple cell towers to locate a cell phone's location. This method is reportedly accurate within 5 to 10 feet. However, the jury is still out on the forensic value of CLSI evidence. Vista Forensic reports that more stories all over the media highlight the errors coming to light with cell phone location evidence. For example, an article in the New York Times states that over 10,000 court verdicts are under review in Denmark due to the Danish authorities' improper analysis of cellular call detail records. The article says the first error was found in an IT system that converts phone companies' raw data into evidence that the police and prosecutors can use to place a person at the scene of a crime. During the conversions, the system omitted some data, creating a less detailed image of a cell phone's whereabouts. The error was fixed in March 2019 after the police discovered it. In a second problem, some cell phone tracking data linked phones to the wrong cell phone towers, potentially connecting innocent people to crime scenes. Okay, y'all. CLSI also has a history in Vista Forensic reports of linking cell phones to the wrong mast, connecting them to several cell towers simultaneously that are hundreds of miles apart, recording text messages wrongly and or getting the location of specific towers wrong. These errors occur when phone companies like AT&T use automatic software to analyze CLSI rather than have the evidence verified by a qualified expert. The U.S. Supreme Court in 2017 in Copper versus the United States held that law enforcement will almost always need a search warrant supported by probable cause to access CLSI evidence. A person does not surrender all Fourth Amendment protection by venturing into the public sphere to the what one seeks to preserve as private, even in an area accessible to the public, may be constitutionally protected. A majority of this court has already recognized that individuals have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the whole of their physical movements. Prior to the digital age, law enforcement might have pursued a suspect for a brief stretch, but doing so for any extended period of time was difficult and costly and therefore rarely undertaken. For that reason, society's expectation has been that law enforcement agents and others would not, and indeed, in the main, simply could not, secretly monitor and catalog every single movement of an individual's car for a very long period. Allowing government access to cell site records contravenes that expectation. Although such records are generated for commercial purposes, that distinction does not negate Carpenter's anticipation of privacy in his physical location. Mapping a cell phone's location over the course of 127 days provides an all encompassing record of the whole as with GPS information, the timestamp data provides an intimate window into a person's life, revealing not only his particular movements, but through them his familial, political, professional, religious, and associations. So the Supreme Court wasn't playing, they covered all the areas. These location records hold for many Americans the privacies of life. And like GPS monitoring, cell phone tracking is remarkably easy, cheap, and efficient compared to traditional investigative tools. With just the click of a button, the government can access each carrier's deep repository of historical location information at practically no expense. So it's not going to cost them anything to look into the cell phone data for the tracking where you were. In fact, historical cell site records present even greater privacy concerns than the GPS monitoring of a vehicle we considered in Jones. Unlike the bug container in the Jones car, a cell phone, almost a feature of human anatomy, tracks nearly exactly the movements of its owner. And that's because we take the cell phone everywhere. Okay? While individuals regularly leave their vehicles, they compulsively carry cell phones with them all the time. A cell phone faithfully follows its owner beyond public thoroughfares and into private residences, doctor's offices, political headquarters, and other potentially revealing locales. Accordingly, when the government tracks the location of a cell phone, it achieves near perfect surveillance as if it had attached an ankle monitor to the phone's user. So it's saying it can find out everywhere you're going. Okay, almost. Moreover, the retrospective quality of the data here gives police access to a category of information otherwise unknowable. In the past, attempts to reconstruct a person's movements were limited by a dearth of records and realities of recollection. With access to CSLI, the government can now travel back in time to retrace a person's whereabouts, subject only to the retention policies of the wireless carriers, which currently maintain records for up to 5 years. So what they're saying is they can find out where you are, where you've been, what you were doing, if your cell phone carrier keeps your records, and right now that's up to 5 years. They can go back in time, do a look back, follow all of your movements going up to 5 years. Remember that. Critically, because location information is continually logged for all of the 400 million devices in the United States, not just those belonging to persons who might happen to come under investigation. This newfound tracking capacity runs against everyone. Runs against everyone. That's why it's already installed. Get your phone. That's why everybody has Google Maps, because they're just tracking all of us on our goings and comings. Okay? Unlike the GPS device in Jones, police not even know in advance whether they want to follow a particular individual or when, because they have that 5-year look back. They don't even have to know today. They can have something come up 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and just do a look back. Okay? Whoever the suspect turns out to be, he has effectively been tailed every moment of every day for 5 years. And the police may, in the government's view, call upon the results of that surveillance without regard to the constraints of the Fourth Amendment. Only the few without cell phones could escape this tireless and absolute surveillance. These constitutional concerns are precisely the reason why the search used to access Kohberger's CLSI will be a hotly contested issue before the evidence can be used at trial. The issue of whether there was sufficient probable cause to access the CLSI will then be followed by challenges to the accuracy and verification of the evidence. From a criminal defense attorney's perspective, cases like Kohberger's have the potential to either change or undermine clearly established constitutional protections. It has been said that bad facts make bad law. And this is a horrible case that tugs at the heartstrings for justice for these four beautiful young people and their families. I agree 100% with Attorney Floyd. Albeit I don't agree with the evidence, I still hold that the focus of finding the killer or killers in this Idaho 4 murders is still should be at the forefront, not trying to place this evidence to push this narrative that this is accurate, reliable evidence when they've already stated in the PCA that is not. Do we need to continue to spend time investigating Mr. Kohberger while at least one or more of the killer or killers is out there, is out in the public free, probably long gone away from Idaho now? It's almost like we need a restart, a redo, a makeover to start again. They cannot place Mr. Kohberger in this house. They cannot put the weapon in his hand. He is found with no defensive wounds, not even an abrasion, a scratch. The rear of the car, they changed the time that the murders allegedly was going to start from the 3 to 4. I will not forget when those two female roommates on the 3rd floor, when their cell phones both stopped working at 2:52 a.m. simultaneously at the same time, I believe that is when the murders started. And you know what? Somehow, some way, Mr. Kohberger is seen not just on video, but a close-up picture in his vehicle moving in Pullman, Washington at 2:53 a.m. He is just not the killer. I'm sorry. I wish we could focus, go back to the crime scene and start over with some more viable potential suspects. He is just not the killer. I don't know how many videos I'm going to have to do. I'm planning now, I took some notes. I'm planning now to go over some other evidence. I'm going to go over a video involving, let me go to my notes. It's just so much. I'm going to go over the coroner again. I may go over the coroner again. All of her contradictions. Why did she show up 5 hours after allegedly the 911 call. That is additional time lost. What about the 3 unknown male DNAs? The 2 inside of the house and the 1 found outside on the glove. And the prosecutor is acting as if they don't even know about this evidence. Was it processed? Did they try to build DNA profiles? They know it was 3 males. So did they get a profile? Did they find a match? Like, what is going on in this case? I just found out the defense filed their 10th request for evidence. Why is it that this is the discovery time for the prosecution to share all of the evidence and it's not happening? 10 motions? That is beyond absurd. What are they hiding? What are they hiding? With this new just acknowledgement with the PCA and their own investigators know that Mr. Kohberger was not where the ping was. The ping was in Moscow, Idaho on November 14th. And they know he was not there through their own investigation. How in the world can you even ask a jury to rely on all of the other pings, allegedly, the 12 pings, all of the pings on the night into the morning of the murders? You be reasonable. Would you rely on it? Is it reasonable? Because I wouldn't. We need facts. We're not trying. I don't want to say they're trying to. The evidence just does not fit Mr. Kohberger. When he was initially arrested, and I challenged everyone to submit any videos, any pictures, anything from November 13th on, showing any abrasions, scratches, anything on Mr. Kohberger's face, arms, hands, neck, that he was in a struggle and a fight, and they're alleging he unalived 4 people with a knife, and he doesn't have a scratch on him. We have to start looking at other potential suspects. At some point, we just have to accept that he may not be the person, the suspect, the assailant, or there may be additional assailants, because nothing is making sense in this case. So thank you guys for checking out this video. If you have any questions, if you want to review any of what was in this video today, please check out the Hidden Horror Facebook page. All my information that I detailed today is on the page for today for you to review, to go over. Let me know your opinion. What do you think? Would you rely on this from the FBI analysis? It's not consistent. It's not reliable. There is nothing specific about the triangulation in the small town of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. It's just nothing specific about it. I don't know if they have some GPS records, if that's going to come out in trial. I would like to know, because right now with what's in the PCA and what's known about triangulation, I don't think this should be submitted as evidence for the jury to hear, review, and maybe even be possibly misled. Again, thank you for checking out this video. I hope to see you in a future video. I'm going to keep coming, hitting this case hard, handling this very weak evidence. It's starting to seem like there is some effort there to just move forward on this case, no matter what. So we have to keep bringing the truth out, and I'm going to do that. So thanks for checking out this video, all my friends. Be safe, be smart, and be savvy. Hopefully I will see you in another video. Thanks for checking us out. Have a beautiful Sunday. Bye, my friends. Bye, everybody.